Hi guys and gals, Shane Stevenson, Director of Museum Collections Curator here at the Buffalo Naval Park. And for today's video, it is the 47th anniversary of the decommissioning of USS Little Rock, also known as John F. Kennedy's Assassination Day, November 22nd. So she spent 9 years, about 9.5 years as a flagship during her little over 16 years of service as a CLG, most in the 6th Fleet, but twice in the 2nd Fleet, the Atlantic Fleet at the time. And so I'll run through, I've got a couple of things from the collections regarding the decommissioning, and let's check that out. Alright, so this is pretty nice. We received this recently. So this was part of the commissioning pennant which they flew when they started their trek home after being relieved on the 7th of September by the USS Albany. So usually each crew member gets a piece of the commissioning pennant, and this gentleman, who is an officer on board the Little Rock, saved his, and then upon his passing in the year 2020, we received it from the estate and the family. This was a very quick turnaround for the decommissioning. They were notified in late August of '76. The 28th of August, that they were being decommissioned on the 22nd November. So immediately, all of the counselors on board, Bureau of Naval Personnel began sending messages, because they had to work with the 1,100, 1,200 man crew to continue their service, to get them on other ships or other vessels, or to be sent home. So their duty assignments for all 1,100, 1,200 men had to be processed extremely quickly. About 25% of the crew cross-decked right to the USS Albany when Little Rock was relieved as a flagship on the 7th of September. So the order comes in on the 28th of August. Just about 10 days later, she's being relieved for the last time by the Albany. About 25% of the crew cross-decks over there. So now you might have 800, 900 men that their next duty assignments need to be figured out. And of course, families are involved. So there is a great flurry of activity. All right, here's a decommissioning certificate. All right, so of course 1976 was also the bicentennial of the United States. William Martin was the commanding officer, but for the last month she had a decommissioning captain, Siegel. Kent Siegel was his name. So they arrived back in America on the 25th of September, and they go right to Virginia. They offload all of their weapons, gunpowders, presumably the Talos, the Talos missiles, boosters, nuclear warheads, and then they head up to Philadelphia shipyard, right, for the decommissioning ceremony. And prior to that, they start red tagging all of the equipment. What's interesting is that they didn't really know the fate yet of the USS Little Rock. So They started red tagging equipment, cutting piping and systems from one part of the ship to the other. They removed all the life rafts. The crew started removing the teak decking. And then work had stopped, and there was some questions of why are there orders coming that work should stop. And very early on, they said that USS Little Rock may be processed as a museum ship. They just didn't know where yet. And so a lot of the equipment that could have been taken off at the time a lot of it was cut. But then once they got wind, the crew got wind, and Captain Siegel got wind that it might be a museum ship, their orders changed. All right, one of the coolest things is we have an all hands magazine from this time period, and let's check that out. So all hands January 77. And you know it's the end of a ship when you can't even get a good cup of coffee. Alright, so see, this is really interesting right here in the editor's note. Since the story was written, stripping of Little Rock has ceased pending her possible disposal as a naval memorial at a location still to be determined. So even back at that time, in say late 76, they figured that the Navy figured that maybe they would this vessel would become a memorial. They just didn't know where. Of course, the story goes with us. We were planning on getting USS the Sullivans in Philadelphia, and when we arrived, they said, "Hey, USS Little Rock was just decommissioned." So going through the records, my understanding is that they didn't really speak of the Little Rock until our crew arrived in Philly to accept the Sullivans as a museum ship. And then while we were there, we were approached with the USS Little Rock, and we agreed, and then both arrived in July of 77. So for the crew, it must have been a really a frenetic time if they didn't cross-deck over to the USS Albany. Right, again, they had to be processed, new orders, what's going to happen to their family. But 47 years later, here we are, and we're very proud of her service as a flagship. And we hope that you enjoyed this video. Okay, well, we will see you again soon. Please leave comments, suggestions. Thank you again for your support, as always. It's really appreciated, and I'm glad you're enjoying the channel and some of the stories that we tell here. And we'll see you again soon. Thanks so much.